I found out my husband was secretly paying for someone's apartment. When I confronted him, he said it was for business. Suspicious, I went to the address and knocked on the door. A woman answered holding a baby that looked exactly like my husband. She said, "You must be his wife." I never thought I'd be the type of person to go digging. I believed in trust. I believed in honesty. I believed that after nearly 20 years of marriage, my husband and I had built something solid, something unshakable. But as it turns out, when something seems unshakable, it's only because you haven't noticed the cracks yet. It all started with a bank statement. I wasn't looking for anything suspicious. I was just organizing bills, making sure everything was in order, when I saw the transaction. A recurring payment, every month, to an apartment complex I didn't recognize. It wasn't a name I'd seen before, and it wasn't tied to anything I knew we owned. The amount was significant, not something small that could be overlooked. At first, I thought maybe it was an investment property. My husband, Mark, was always talking about diversifying assets, though we had always made those decisions together. This was different. This was hidden. I waited until that evening to ask him. We were having dinner, just the two of us, as our son had already moved out for college. I placed the bank statement on the table between us. "What's this?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Mark barely glanced at it before picking up his fork again. "Oh, that. It's for business." "Business?" I repeated. "What kind of business requires you to pay for an apartment every month?" He sighed like I was being difficult. "It's for a client. A temporary housing arrangement." Something about the way he said it, so dismissive, so casual, didn't sit right with me. We had been married long enough for me to recognize when he was avoiding something. I let the conversation drop, but that night, while he slept, I took the address from the statement and searched it online. It wasn't in a commercial district. It was a residential apartment building in a quiet part of town. Not exactly a place for corporate housing. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe he really was helping a client. Maybe there was a simple explanation. But the unease wouldn't go away. So the next day, while Mark was at work, I drove to the address. The building was nondescript, just a regular apartment complex with a small courtyard and a row of mailboxes by the entrance. My heart pounded as I walked up the steps. I didn't know what I was expecting. Maybe an empty apartment, maybe a confused tenant who would confirm that this was all a misunderstanding. I knocked. The door opened after a moment, and a woman stood there, holding a baby in her arms. She was younger than me, late 20s, maybe. Her dark hair was pulled into a loose ponytail, and she looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. Then she said, "You must be his wife." The world tilted beneath me. I looked down at the baby in her arms. My breath caught in my throat. He was small, barely a year old, with a familiar face. Too familiar. He had Mark's eyes. I felt the floor shift under my feet, but I steadied myself. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She hesitated. Then, in a voice just as quiet, she said, "My name is Olivia." I swallowed hard. "And that's his baby?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped aside, gesturing for me to come in. I don't know why I did. Maybe I was in shock, maybe I needed to hear it from her, to make it real. Whatever the reason, I stepped inside, and the door clicked shut behind me. The apartment was small but neat. A playpen sat in the corner, filled with toys. A diaper bag rested on the couch. It was a home. Not a temporary place for a client, but a home. She sighed, shifting the baby in her arms. "I didn't know about you at first," she said quietly. "He told me he was separated." Separated. The word made my stomach turn. "How long?" I asked. 3 years. 3 years. I gripped the back of a chair to steady myself. 3 years meant that this hadn't been some brief mistake, some moment of weakness. This had been a second life. Olivia glanced at the baby, then back at me. "I'm sorry," she said, and for some reason, that made my chest tighten. She wasn't the one who should be apologizing. I exhaled slowly. Does he come here often?" She nodded. "A few times a week. He helps out with the baby." She hesitated. "Or he did, before things started getting distant." I closed my eyes for a moment. Of course. Because now that the baby was older, now that things were harder, he was pulling away. Just like he had been acting different at home. I had spent months wondering why Mark seemed distracted, why he was always on edge, why he suddenly had late meetings and business trips that never lined up with anything I could confirm. Now I knew. A part of me wanted to scream, to cry, to demand answers. But standing there, looking at the child, an innocent child who had no idea what kind of mess he had been born into, I realized something. I wasn't the only one Mark had lied to. I wasn't the only one he had betrayed. I looked at Olivia, really looked at her. She wasn't the villain in my story. She was just another person he had deceived. Another person he had built a life with, only to start pulling away when things got inconvenient. I took a deep breath. "Do you need anything?" She blinked in surprise. "What? Do you need anything?" I repeated. "Support? Help?" Her expression crumbled, like no one had ever asked her that before. And in that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't going to fall apart. I wasn't going to let Mark control what happened next. If he thought he could build two separate lives and walk away from one when it suited him, he was wrong. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The weight of the truth settled in my chest like a stone. Standing in Olivia's apartment, I realized my life wasn't what I thought it was. I had spent years trusting Mark, believing in him, building a life together. And all along, he had another home. Another family. I should have walked out then. I should have left without another word. But I couldn't. Not yet. I looked at Olivia, really looked at her. She had dark circles under her eyes, her clothes were a little worn, and the exhaustion on her face told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't living some glamorous hidden life with my husband. She was struggling. And suddenly, a thought crossed my mind. "If he's been paying for this place," I said slowly, "why do you look like you're barely getting by?" She let out a bitter laugh. "Because he stopped helping a few months ago. At first, he was here all the time. He paid the rent, helped with groceries, made promises." She looked down at the baby in her arms. "Then, after his first birthday, things changed. He started coming less and less. Then one day, he just told me he had expenses to take care of and that I needed to figure things out on my own." I clenched my fists. So this was his pattern. He had built something with her, just like he had with me, and when it got too hard, too real, he started pulling away. I had been so focused on my own pain that I hadn't even thought about hers. "I need to ask you something," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Did you ever meet his coworkers? His family?" She shook her head. "No. Every time I asked, he had an excuse. He told me his job was complicated, that his personal life was messy. I was naive. I thought he was just a private person." I exhaled slowly. He had kept us both separate. He had lived two lives, making sure the walls between them never touched. Until now. I reached for my phone. "I need to call him." Her eyes widened. "You're going to tell him you know?" I nodded. "Yes. But I'm not just going to tell him. I'm going to see what he does when he realizes everything is falling apart." I stepped outside and dialed Mark's number. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady when he answered. "Hey," he said, his tone normal, like nothing had changed. Like he wasn't living a double life. "What's up?" "I just have a quick question," I said. "Where are you?" There was a pause. Then he said, "At work." "Why?" A lie. I knew for a fact that he had taken the afternoon off. I took a deep breath. "That's strange," I said. "Because I'm standing in front of an apartment you've been secretly paying for, talking to a woman holding your child." Silence. Then, "Where are you?" His voice was sharper now, tense. "I think you know exactly where I am," I said. "And I think you should get here. Now." More silence. Then, finally, he muttered, "I'm on my way." I hung up. Olivia was standing in the doorway, watching me. "He's coming, isn't he?" I nodded. "Yes." She swallowed. "I don't know if I can handle this." "You don't have to," I said. "But I do. Because this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about the years of lies, the way he had strung us both along. He needed to answer for all of it. 20 minutes later, I heard his car pull up. I stood outside, waiting. Olivia stayed inside with the baby, her presence looming behind me like a ghost of everything Mark had tried to hide. He got out of his car, and for the first time, I saw panic on his face. "You're not supposed to be here," he said. I let out a humorless laugh. That's what you're going with? Not an apology. Not an explanation. He glanced toward the apartment. I can explain, then do it. I crossed my arms. Explain why you lied to me. Explain why you've been supporting another home behind my back. Explain why you abandoned Olivia and your child. His jaw clenched. It's complicated. No, it's not, I shot back. You were living a double life, and when it got hard, you ran away. Just like you've been running from me for months now. His eyes flickered with something, anger, maybe, or fear. I was going to tell you. When? After I found out on my own. Or were you just going to disappear from their lives like they never mattered? He exhaled sharply. I didn't plan for this to happen. That's the problem, Mark, I said. You didn't plan. You just took what you wanted without thinking about what would happen when the truth came out. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. I want a divorce. His face paled. Wait, no, I said firmly. I'm done. I spent years being your wife, trusting you, believing in you. And all that time, you were lying to me. You don't get to talk your way out of this. His eyes flickered with desperation. What about our son? What about everything we built? Our son is an adult, I said. And as for what we built, you destroyed it the moment you decided to build something else behind my back. For the first time, I saw it sink in. The realization that he had lost control. That his perfect little secret had unraveled. I turned to walk away. But just as I reached my car, Olivia stepped forward. There's one more thing, she said. I turned back. She hesitated, then looked at Mark. Tell her about the money. My stomach dropped. What money? Mark's face darkened. Olivia, don't. She squared her shoulders. You need to know. A few months ago, he tried to convince me to sign something. Some kind of financial agreement. He said he'd keep helping with the baby if I signed. My blood ran cold. What kind of agreement? She swallowed. I don't know the details, but it felt off. Like he was trying to protect himself. Legally. I turned back to Mark. What did you do? He didn't answer. I stepped closer, my voice sharp. Mark. What did you do? He finally looked at me. And in his eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen before. Fear. And that's when I realized. There was more. Much more. And I wasn't leaving until I knew every single secret he had tried to bury. Mark's silence told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't just lying. He was hiding something bigger, something that went beyond cheating in secret apartments. And I was going to find out exactly what it was. Olivia clutched the baby tighter, her expression tense. You need to check your finances, she told me. Because I think he's been moving money around. I looked back at Mark. Is that true? His jaw tightened, and for the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. That was all the confirmation I needed. I turned on my heel and walked straight to my car. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I combed through every financial record I could access. Bank statements, credit card transactions, investments, anything that could tell me where our money was going. And what I found made my stomach turn. There were multiple transfers to private accounts I had never seen before. Money disappearing into places I couldn't trace. Loans taken out in both of our names, but only he had access to the funds. Then I checked our home's mortgage. He had refinanced it, without telling me. Mark wasn't just lying. He was stealing. I wasn't going to confront him right away. No, that would be too easy. Mark had spent years building a double life, carefully controlling the narrative. If I wanted justice, I had to be smart. So I spent the next few weeks gathering everything. Every bank statement, every hidden transaction, every suspicious withdrawal. I made copies of everything and consulted a lawyer. Then, I did something Mark never expected. I called our son. Our son, Ethan, was in his early 20s, working his first job out of college. He had always looked up to Mark, thought he was a hardworking, successful man. That illusion shattered the moment I showed him the evidence. At first, he didn't want to believe it. There has to be some mistake, he said, shaking his head. I thought so too, I told him. But this isn't just about me. It's about you, too. Look at this. I handed him a document. Mark had taken out a loan using Ethan's name as a co-signer, without his knowledge. Ethan's face drained of color. He used my name. Yes, I said. And he was planning to disappear when it all fell apart. Leaving me and you with the damage. That was the final straw. Ethan wasn't just angry, he was furious. Tell me what you need me to do, he said. And that's when I knew, Mark was about to lose everything. I played my role well. For the next few weeks, I pretended everything was normal. I didn't mention the money, the affair, or the secret loans. I cooked dinner, made small talk, and acted like I hadn't discovered his betrayal. Meanwhile, I worked with my lawyer to secure my financial safety. Then, when the time was right, I made my move. One evening, while Mark was at work, I packed my bags. I took everything valuable, documents, jewelry, anything that was rightfully mine. Then I left a single envelope on the kitchen table. Inside was a copy of the divorce papers, and a letter explaining everything I knew. And I didn't stop there. I sent copies of Mark's financial records to his employer, proving he had been misusing company funds for his business expenses. I filed legal complaints for fraud and identity theft on behalf of Ethan. And as the final touch, I called Olivia. You don't owe him anything, I told her. Take legal action for child support. He has more money hidden away, and I'll help you find it. She agreed. Mark had spent years controlling the narrative, making sure his secret stayed buried. But by the time he got home that night, it was all crumbling. Mark called me over and over again, but I didn't answer. Instead, I watched from a safe distance as everything he had built fell apart. His employer fired him for financial misconduct. Olivia took him to court for unpaid child support. Ethan filed fraud charges for the loan Mark had taken out in his name. And the house? That was mine. The lawyer made sure of that. Mark had nothing left. The last time I saw Mark was 6 months later, in a courtroom. He looked exhausted, worn down from legal battles and financial ruin. When our divorce was finalized, he tried to talk to me. I never meant for it to end like this, he said. I looked him in the eye and smiled. Neither did I. Then I walked away. Because Mark had spent years lying, cheating, and taking. But in the end, he lost everything. And I gained freedom.